President Trump calling Fed Chair Jay Powell a fool as the central bank keeps rates steady. Yahoo Finance's Jennifer Schonberger joining us now with more on that latest post from the president.
Good afternoon, Julie. Yes, just one day after the Federal Reserve opted to hold interest rates steady, President Trump resuming his criticism of Fed Chair Jay Powell, calling him a fool who's too late and doesn't have a clue. Fed Chair Jay Powell and the rest of the central bank are awaiting greater clarity on the impact of the president's policies on the economy before charting a course forward on interest rates. The Fed sees the risks for both higher unemployment and higher inflation rising in the face of the president's tariffs. Chair Powell indicated no sign of an imminent change in policy, noting that preemptive rate cuts just wouldn't make sense right now in the face of all the uncertainty and expectation for higher inflation and weaker growth. I asked Fed Chair Jay Powell during his press conference on Wednesday why he hasn't reached out to the president for a meeting amidst all this uncertainty.
I've never asked for a meeting with any president, and I never will. It's not, I wouldn't do that. There's never a reason for me to ask for a meeting. It's always been the other way.
Chairman, Mr. President, says that you would have to call him for a meeting. Do you plan to meet with him?
I could
and what
call
do you
him
think
for a
about,
meeting, but it's like talking to a wall. He should be.
the Bank of England cut today?
Well, the Bank of England cut, China cut, everybody's cutting but him. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's a shame. I call him Too Late, Too Late Powell. That's his nickname. And it's a shame. It's ridiculous.
Donald Trump isn't holding back again. With his trademark fire and fury, the former president is taking direct aim at one of the most powerful economic figures in the country. And this time, the gloves are completely off. Before we dive in, kindly take a second to hit the like button. It really helps to support and to grow my channel and keeps us bringing you the latest market insights. Thank you. As markets watch every move, Trump's latest verbal assault could shake more than just headlines. It could rattle the Fed itself. Just one day after the Federal Reserve hit the pause button on interest rates, Donald Trump jumped on Truth Social and lit up Fed Chair Jerome Powell again. This time, Trump didn't just critique policy, he flat out mocked the man in charge of America's monetary decisions. He slammed Powell, calling him "Too Late Jerome," and even went as far as labeling him a fool who doesn't have a clue. And then, in classic Trump style, he added a twist. Other than that, I like him very much. Now, if you're wondering why Trump is so fired up, let's break it down. The Fed chose not to raise or lower interest rates this week. Powell said he's waiting to see how Trump's proposed tariffs might affect the economy before making a move. But Trump thinks the Fed should have acted yesterday. He's been hammering the Fed for years to cut rates, claiming it would boost growth and bring in more money, especially now that he says inflation is basically non-existent. In his post, Trump doubled down on his message. There's virtually no inflation, he wrote, and insisted that almost all costs are down, while tariff money is, in his words, pouring into the U.S. But here's where things get interesting. Wall Street is paying close attention. Traders have now delayed their bets for a rate cut. They were expecting one in June, but now July's looking more likely, and even then, the odds are only slightly better than a coin flip. The markets are still predicting 3 small rate cuts this year, starting in the summer, but with Trump ramping up the pressure and Powell standing his ground. The clash between politics and economics is heating up fast. So who's right? Trump or the Fed? Is inflation really virtually gone? Or is this just political theater before the election season kicks into full swing? So where does the Federal Reserve stand now? Well, that's a bit of a mystery. Back in March, the Fed signaled it might cut interest rates twice in 2025. But after this latest meeting, it's not even clear if that's still on the table. When pressed about the next possible move, maybe as soon as June, Chair Jerome Powell played it cool. His message? Be patient, Powell told reporters. There's just too much uncertainty right now. Translation: the economy is giving off mixed signals, and the Fed doesn't want to make a move it might regret. Here's the deal. Inflation is still a concern, even as economic growth appears to be slowing. That's a tricky combo. Prices are staying high, but the engine of the economy is losing steam. And because of that, Powell says it's too early to start cutting rates. He doesn't want to act before the data is clear. But not everyone agrees. Some economists warn that waiting too long could backfire. If the Fed keeps delaying rate cuts, they might end up slamming the brakes too late, then have to cut rates aggressively to catch up. That's what Greg Dacco, chief economist at EY, is warning about. He says dragging their feet could force the Fed to play catch-up later in the year. So here's the tension. Powell wants to wait and watch. Trump wants action now. And experts are divided. The Fed is cautious. Trump is calling them out. And the economy? It's somewhere in the middle. Uncertain, unsteady, and unpredictable. One thing's for sure, the Fed's next move could shift the entire financial landscape. Whether they act soon or wait too long, there will be major consequences for markets, mortgages, and Main Street. Stick around because we're tracking every twist in this high-stakes standoff. While the U.S. Federal Reserve is standing still, other major central banks around the world are already moving. Just this week, the Bank of England decided to cut its key interest rate by a quarter point, pointing to easing inflation as the reason. They're signaling that it's time to give their economy a bit of breathing room. But in Washington, things are a little more tense. Fed Chair Jerome Powell made headlines on Wednesday, not for what he did, but for what he said. After weeks of pressure from Donald Trump to slash interest rates, Powell pushed back firmly. He told reporters, "We don't let politics guide our decisions." He added that he's never asked for a meeting with any president and doesn't plan to start now. That comment came after Trump ramped up his very public campaign to sway the Fed. As his administration rolls out steep new tariffs on imported goods, Trump has been demanding rate cuts fast. And in true Trump fashion, he's not exactly using gentle language. He's blasted Powell on social media, calling him a total stiff and a major loser, saying the Fed chair is always too late to act. In one post, Trump warned that the U.S. economy could slow down unless Powell gets it together and slashes rates now. According to Trump, many experts are calling for what he terms preemptive cuts, lowering interest rates before the slowdown hits, not after. But here's the key difference. While some central banks overseas are already easing up, the Fed is still holding the line. Why? Because Powell and his team are still seeing enough inflation risk to justify caution. They want more data. They don't want to jump too soon. Other countries are cutting rates. Trump wants the U.S. to follow. Powell is saying, not so fast. So now we're watching a three-way showdown. Global trends say, ease up. Trump says, act now. The Fed says, wait and see. Who's right? That's the trillion-dollar question. And whatever the answer, the next few months could reshape not just the economy, but the political landscape too. And just when you thought things couldn't get more intense, Trump took it up another notch. In a fiery post, the former president said Jerome Powell's termination can't come fast enough. That raised a few eyebrows, especially since the Fed chair can't legally be fired just because the president doesn't like his decisions. Later, Trump clarified he doesn't actually plan to remove Powell before his term ends in 2026. But the message was loud and clear. Trump wants him out yesterday. When Powell was asked about it directly at a press conference this week, he stayed cool and composed. His response? I've pretty much covered that issue. In other words, not going there. Powell has made it clear in the past he intends to serve out his full term. And legally, he's protected from being removed without cause, meaning a president can't just fire him over disagreements on interest rates. But the questions didn't stop there. Reporters pressed him again. Does Trump's pressure campaign influence the Fed's decisions? Powell didn't flinch. It doesn't affect us doing our job at all, he said. He insisted the Fed remains independent no matter what's trending on Truth Social. And when asked why he hasn't met with Trump, Powell made it clear. That's not his role. I've never asked for a meeting with any president, and I never will, he said. He added that if a president wants to meet, it's up to them to reach out. But so far, no invitation has come. Trump wants Powell gone, but legally he can't fire him. Powell is staying calm, standing firm, and refusing to engage. And the Fed? It's still calling the shots based on data, not drama. As the economy hangs in the balance and campaign season heats up, the clash between Trump and the Fed could shape everything from Wall Street to your wallet. Trump's on the attack, Powell's holding the line, and the future of interest rates still up in the air. This battle between politics and the Fed isn't just about personalities. It could impact your mortgage, your job, your investments, and the entire direction of the U.S. economy. And with 2026 just around the corner, the pressure is only going to build. We'll be here to break it all down, keep you ahead of the headlines, and help you make sense of what it really means for your money. Thanks for watching. This is Cashflow Boss reporting the truth behind the numbers. If you got value from this video, do me a favor, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a beat in the world of money, power, and policy. Until next time, stay sharp, stay smart, and keep your cash flowing. Thank you for watching.